Hello, welcome back to Reads of an Apple. My name is Stacy. Today we are here to talk about the books that I read in the month of July 2023. It's a little bit all over the place. I will warn you. But, let's just get into it because there's a lot to talk about. So we will go over stats before we dig into the thick of the books that I read. So I read a grand total of 23 books in the month of July, which is funny because that's how many I read in June. However, what's a big difference is the total number of pages. In this month, it was 9,306, which is almost double what I read in the month of June, which is bonkers. I averaged 2.43 days per book. So this is a lot longer. Usually my average is under 2. My average page count also was reflected a lot higher, and that is 404.61. So I read a lot longer books this month, for sure. As for the page breakdowns, I read 2 books under 100 pages, 2 books in the 100s, 5 books in the 500s, 9 books in the 300s, 3 books in the 400s, 1 book in the 500s, and 1 book that was 1,000 plus. Technically, it was 2,000 plus. I think technically it was even 2,500 plus. Something like that. 10 of the authors I read this month were new to me, which is fun. And I didn't have any rereads once again. Okay, as for book clubs, readathons, read-alongs, 2 of these books I picked up specifically for those things. However, almost all the books I read this month applied to different readathons and reading challenges I had going on, but 2 of them I picked up specifically for like a prompt or a mini thing. 8 of the books I read had diversity. 5 of the books I read were standalones, which is crazy. Typically, that's only like 1 or nothing. I am a series reader. 7 of these books were recommended to me. That's a lot higher this month. 3 of these books I owned already before I read them. 1 of these books I had pre-ordered, physically at least. And then 5 books I added to my wish list. Although I should say, technically, I added them to a list to eventually be added to my wish list. Because I haven't updated my Amazon wish list in forever. But that's beside the fact. So we will just keep going on. 2 of the books I read physically. 11 of the books I read digitally, so ebooks. 9 of the books I read were audiobooks. And then I read 1 combination, an audiobook and an ebook at the same, well, not at the same time. I read a mixture of it. Okay, as for publishing, 19 of the books I read were independently published. 2 of them were small published, and 2 of them were, not small published. They were from a small publisher, and then 2 of them were traditionally published, so the bigger pubs. As for the decades I read in, 7 of these books were published in the 2010s, and the remaining 16 were all published in the 2020s. Apparently, I am just becoming a 2020 girly. I used to mainly read in like the 2000s and early 2010s, and I just can't get away from new books, I guess. Then the ages that the main characters were age group wise, 2 of them were young adults, 15 of them were in their 20s, 4 of them were in their 30s, and 2 of them, at least one of the main characters, was a supernatural, long-lived, immortal type person. As for where the books I've read were located, 2 of them I owned physically. 2 of them I digitally owned. 1 of them I read as an e-arc. 8 of these books I checked out from KU. 9 of these books I checked out from Hoopla, and I had 1 checkout from Libby this month. It's been a while since I've Libby, my Libby actually had something that I wanted to read. Then as for my ratings, my average rating this month is 4.20, which is pretty good considering the spread we're going to have here. 10 of these books were 5 stars. 2 of them were 4.5 stars. 4 of them were 4 stars. 2 of them were 3.5 stars. 4 of them were 3 stars. And 1 of them was 2.5 stars. And then the final stat that I keep track of is my genres. Most of these are all subgenres of the romance genre. So 16 contemporaries, 2 fantasies, 2 historicals, 1 paranormal, 1 sci-fi, and 1 fan fiction. As for my contemporaries, I break those down even farther. So 1 of them I read was dark. I had 1 holiday. 1 was a rom-com. 6 were small towns. 1 was a sports romance. 1 was a romantic suspense. And 5 of these were just straight contemporaries. And that's it. That's all my stats. It's a lot. I'm going to take a drink of coffee and then we're going to dig into the books because we have 23-ish to talk about. All right. So the first book I read in the month of July was Take Me Home by Carrie Elks. This is the first book in her Heartbreak Brothers series. Now, I specifically wanted to read a Carrie Elks this month because one of the prompts, or a couple of the prompts would have worked for Carrie Elks for this Buzzing About Romance Summer Reading Challenge. One of the prompts on their bingo board was do a buddy read about a book that's mentioned during a specific episode. I don't remember the episode number, but the episode was like books we think deserve more hype type of episode. And a couple of people on Discord were like, hey, we are interested in doing the first book in this series by Carrie Elk, the Heartbreak Brothers, and if anybody else wants to join in. And I was like, yes, me, please, me. I read it in one sitting, practically. It was so good. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this. This is Maddie and Grayson. Grayson is a rock star. He left home 10 years ago from his small town. Him, his 3 brothers, and his sister have a very contentious relationship with their father. He is a very hard, unloving, undemonstrative person since their mother passed away, and they practically were raised by their mother's sister, so their aunt, who's not like blood related to their father, basically moved in to help raise them because they were all pretty young when she passed. But he is back home because his father was recently in the hospital and he kind of needs a break and needs to reset to start writing music for his next album because his world tour just ended. And he runs into his high school sweetheart's younger sister. It is their romance. This is in the extended universe of my favorite trope, wrong sibling. I say extended universe because technically it would count. However, my sweet spot is like they're currently or had just finished dating when they meet who they're supposed to be with. And so this one, because it's like been 10 years since he's dated the other one, I consider it in the extended universe. But I love this. I gave this 4.5 stars, like I said. My little bit of detractor is there is like a third act conflict, not really between Madison and Grayson. It is a situation that happened when Madison was at a prestigious music school with a boy that this is a spoiler, but I do think that this kind of needs to be brought up. It is, I don't know if it's sexual assault, if it's SA, but it's definitely a very gross and icky situation. Nothing was actually done to Maddie outside of the fact that she was cheated on and filmed without being known, but nobody physically touches her. I hope that doesn't spoil it too much. If you want to know, just reach out to me and I'll explain the situation if something like that might potentially be triggering to you. But I don't want to spoil it too much because it wasn't what I was expecting to happen. And that situation, I didn't like how it was handled by Grayson's people. And I know this is the dark romance, the mafia romance lover in me. But I really wanted this other guy to get some retribution and not just a punch in the face. I was like, no, this guy needs to be drugged down. He does not get to have a freaking pop career. This dude, cutting him off. But like I said, that's more of a me thing and not necessarily a book thing. But I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to read more from Carrie Elks. I know I've heard a lot of good things about her Winter Veil series as well. So we'll see when I pick her up next, but another new author, which is great, and one I can see easily becoming bingeable for me. But I have too strict of TBRs now. I can't just go binge crazy like I used to do. Or maybe I just could, and I just say screw everything. But it's fine. It's fine. We'll move on. Then I picked up Yikes on a Cracker by Megan Wade. This was originally called Hayden is the hero's name. So this was Hayden's Firecracker. It was a part of like a KU multi-author collection where all of the books were the hero's name Firecracker. They were all 4th of July novellas. And then Megan retitled this one, and it is now in her Sugar Curves series, is book number 2. And now it's called Yikes on a Cracker. I don't really understand the Yikes on a Cracker title, but okay. I gave it 3 stars. I did not realize that this was going to be 18-year-olds. So young adult, it was a little bit weird. The conversations that they were having, I feel like I was an overly mature 18-year-old at my age, just because of the life situations I have been through. But even I wasn't having conversations like this. It just felt a little funky to me. And I don't know. I didn't, it was like they were best friends growing up, but they always like picked on each other, and they both thought that they antagonized each other and pushed each other to do, get in trouble kind of a thing. But secretly they've been in love with each other. But our heroine Zoe didn't realize it was love, but Hayden was in love with her. And I'm just like, this is too like stereotypical of what boys do when they like crush on a girl. And I get it's a thing. I get it's become a stereotype because it happens, but it doesn't happen every single time. And then add on the fact that they're 18 and suddenly they're in love with each other. And I'm like, you people haven't seen each other for 6 years. A lot of growing up happens between the age of 12 and the age of 18. Hayden and his family end up moving away. Hayden's basically had to take over raising his younger brother because his new stepfather and his mom just kind of leave him to his business. And so he's the one that basically had to raise his new younger brother. And it's a whole thing. And I get why Hayden is more grown up in the situation, but I didn't understand what made Zoe more mature. Not that you have to go through something to be more mature, but I just feel like typically there's a reason why when you are not your typical teenage maturity, it's because you've experienced more than most, like the average teenager has. But 3 stars, it was fine. Not my favorite from Megan Wade, for sure. Then I picked up the final book for the Ilona Andrews read-along. This was wrapping up the Innkeeper Chronicles. This is the last published book in the series. The series is not over by any long shot. This is book 5, Sweep of the Heart. 5 stars. Are we surprised? This one's a chunker. This is the longest of the series. I love this. It was so much fun, and it was a little bit different. And this is something that I really enjoyed seeing, like in the later Kate Daniels books and in the 6th Hidden Legacy book, where we see our main couple just established, and we get to see them really kind of working together and striving to work together and keep their relationship going, and, you know, all the little day-to-day stuff that, as some people would phrase it, is them choosing each other every day kind of a situation. And I loved it. It was so much fun. I highly, highly, highly recommend Ilona Andrews if you haven't read them. I think they are some of the best at world building. I think this series is probably my favorite world building from them, but that's because, I mean, they always throw in twists and other things on top of what you normally would think of in, like, Kate Daniels. Like, the vampires are different, the shifters are different, but here it takes it to next level because we're also adding in, like, the sci-fi, different planets, magic. It's just completely different, and I love it to pieces. This book was so great. I can't wait to read more from Ilona Andrews. I don't know when they're planning on returning to this series. Typically, they do the Innkeeper's books serialized on their website, and then once they kind of finish it, then they pull them all down and they rework it and put it into a book. They don't make a lot of changes, but they do kind of add some stuff and kind of flesh it out so it fits better. It flows better in a book instead of in the serialized format. And then they release it. But because this came out in December of 2022, they said they weren't going to do an Innkeeper's book. Typically it goes over the summer. So we might not have Innkeepers again till next summer. Who knows? But I'm excited. Oh my gosh, I'm excited for what happens next. I love this world. I will read anything Ilona Andrews writes. And yeah, Sweep of the Heart. Is it my favorite of the series? I don't know, maybe tied for first, but I really, really love this book, and I will be doing a reread once the graphic audio is out, because we have graphic audios for every other book in the series so far. I can't wait to get the graphic audio of this one. I love it. So we will move on from my gush fest of Ilona Andrews. There's typically one a month when the read along is happening. Okay, so the next book I picked up, what I thought was the last book, but surprisingly is not the last book. It is just book 4 in the Tales from an Alpha Art Gallery. This is, like I said, book 4, Love Binds by Cynthia St. Aubin. I've been slowly plucking away at this series. We finally have a 5-star. Every other book, I think, has either been 4 or 4.5 stars. There's always just been that little something that just wouldn't quite get to 5 stars for me. I was sad about some things that happened in this because there are some side character deaths that happen. I will just kind of throw that out there. A couple of them were favorites of mine. One was a new favorite that was introduced in this book, and then he died, and I was like, no. But I loved it. I mean, we get Hannah and Mark together. We're still kind of dealing with Mark not being open about things 100% with Hannah, but he finally is starting to really open up, and other people are now pushing him to open up because they are finally mated. We have no more Detective Morrison, although he is still in this book, even though he has been turned into a vampire. Spoiler for the end of the 3rd book. But it was just great, and I feel like this had the same humor. That is what has been keeping me going with the wonky romance situation in the series, is the humor is just like my sweet spot. I love it. I love Hannah. I love that unless they're flying around the world, it's set in a small mountain town here in Colorado. And I just love this series. And then when I was looking to see if Cynthia has a newsletter, surprise, surprise, there's another book coming. I was just like, oh. So, yeah, I don't know what it is. It just said coming soon or coming fall or coming winter or something like that. So, yeah. I'm excited to read more. I have been reading these via audiobook. The audio narrator is so good. She does the humor so well. I highly recommend these via audio, but the ebooks are also on KU. But the audiobooks are super good. I will throw that out there. So 5 stars. And I can't wait to see what happens next. And I'm excited that there's more to come from Cynthia. Okay, then I picked up one of my summer reading challenges, Codename Genesis by Sawyer Bennett. Sawyer Bennett is a favorite of Becky's, and I knew I had to pick up a Sawyer Bennett book finally. I kind of went wild, and I went with Codename Genesis. This is the first book in their Jamieson Security Force series. I gave this 4 stars. I wasn't 100% sure outside of I knew that this was more romantic suspense. I was nervous about going. I was either thinking about this or one of her hockey books, but I always get so nervous when I jump into a new hockey series or a new author who's writing hockey because I don't know if they know the game. And I know that this is a whole thing going on right now. I don't really want to talk about it because it kind of hurts my soul a little bit in a lot of different ways. But maybe I'll do a video on my thoughts on the situation as both a romance reader and a hockey fan. But I always get nervous because I have picked up hockey books where, as a hockey fan who's been a hockey fan for almost 20 years now, since 1995, I noticed the little things when the point systems were wrong. I mean, there's the big things like people talking about quarter 1, and I'm like, it's hockey. There are 3 of them. They're periods. Anyway, I was nervous about jumping into her hockey book, even though I know that her hockey series is greatly loved. So I went with this one because the audio was available on Hoopla. So I was like, we're going to go with the romantic suspense. And it's been a while since I've read romantic suspense. This was Second Chance Romance. It's Jocelyn and Kynan. Jocelyn is, basically like a more actor Taylor Swift. She's a huge pop star. She's also been doing like TV shows and movies and things. She's just like an it girl, and she's having trouble with a stalker. So she reaches out to an old flame of hers who used to be a bodyguard of hers, but now he owns his own security firm, and that's Jamieson Security Force, the name of the series. But she reaches out to him for protection and to help deal with the stalker situation, and it is their reconnecting. There is the situation where we learn why she kind of ghosted him, or like suddenly broke up with him and then ghosted him. And it was fine. I gave it 4 stars. I listened to it super quickly. It didn't particularly grab me, but I think the writing was typically for me when a book is fine and it's okay, I enjoyed it, but it didn't stick in my brain. Typically I would give that like a 3 or a 3.5 star, but here I think the writing was good enough that and engaging enough that I felt okay rating it 4 stars and not lower. So a good start. I'm definitely intrigued to read more from Sawyer Bennett. Like I mentioned, I know she is a favorite. Then I picked up Down to a Science by Haley Cass. This is the first book in a multi-author I Heart Sapphic Pride collection series on KU. This book started out so promising and then just quickly flamed and burned for me. I ended up giving it a 3 star because there were some elements that I did enjoy that did keep me engaged. This book took me way too long to get through for how short it was. I really kind of struggled with the way Ellie was kind of dealing with her sexuality. I feel like the author tried to make it work, but I feel like already the things that she had said in the beginning of the book were then being contradicted, or things that she had said and done and talked about things that had happened in the past were then kind of slightly manipulated later on in the book to make us believe. And I feel like, I don't know. And this is where I feel weird because I don't know. You know, we get to review these books. This book felt to me like our heroine isn't necessarily gay or just a lesbian. She seems more to me like a demisexual. Like, she falls in love with someone and she is turned on by someone that she knows really well, has strong feelings for. The reason why I feel this is the way the author explained the previous relationships of Ellie is, you know, basically the other person that she's had a huge crush on and been falling in love with was her best friend in high school, and was a woman. And then her couple boyfriends, they didn't have any good relationships because all of her boyfriends were complete dicks and didn't care about her pleasure. And, like, they weren't described well at all. And I'm just like, that's true for a lot of boys in that age group. I feel like for me to feel, I don't know. I felt like there needed to be an example of someone that she had a good relationship, that she was very friendly with, that there was a male that she had previously dated. And I'm trying not to judge this person's sexuality, and I don't do this to people in real life. But this is a book, and I need it to feel believable to me, and it just felt weird that the only other person that Ellie had loved was someone who was her best friend. And, you know, they hung out all the time and they were always together. And the same kind of situation happens here. They are definitely friends to lovers. And so I needed to see, that's why I feel like it's more like demisexual, and, you know, it doesn't matter gender, and maybe she leans like she's maybe more bi in the binary or non-binary sector. I don't know. It just felt weird to me at times, and I feel like we were building up Ellie and this character and her coming to terms with her likes and her dislikes and her past relationships and her wanting to have a relationship with Mia when Mia moves to town, and then it just kind of felt like Ellie was just like, well, I guess I'm gay. But I was just like, her sister's best friend and a couple of Ellie's best friends, because she has a twin sister as well that she lives with, are bi. And, like, that talks about how there's a lot of friends that are bi. And so it was weird because it felt like in Ellie's mind, she's either gay or she's straight. And I'm like, there's a whole other, like, spectrum, I guess, that you could be on, or call yourself, identify as, I don't know. As you can tell, something didn't work with me for this book. And then this is a slow burn. They literally don't get together until like 98%, or maybe it was 97%. It was ridiculous. I was like, come on, I'm reading a romance. And most of this, it felt almost a little more women's fiction to me. And, a trigger for traumatic death of a parent that is not either of our characters. Mia, our love interest in this, is a firefighter, and she goes through a pretty horrific rescue at like the very end of the book, which triggers them being together. And that was unexpected and suddenly very, like, graphically sad and horrendous. So I'm also going to throw that out there because it did not fit the vibe of the book. Then I picked up Hold Me Today by Maria Louise. This was another one I wanted to pick up as I think it was on the Girl Crush list that they did. So they do the Book Boyfriend and the Girl Crush list on the Buzzing About Romance podcast. And I picked this up because this is one of Leah's girl crushes, Mina. I love this. I gave it 5 stars. it took me a little bit to get into it, but once I was in it, there just kept being things that popped up where I was just like, same. There is one conversation that I remember. I was working on my digital journal, listening to the audiobook, and Mina was talking to like her best friend, and they were kind of joking about getting together. And I can't remember if it was Mina or her best friend, but one of them's like, well, there's a hockey game on tonight. And they're just like, go out for dinner or watch the hockey game. And they're just like, it's not a question. Watch the hockey game. We can go out later. And I was like, oh my God, yes. I feel slightly called out by this situation. I was like, yeah, it could be a middle of the season, no repercussions whatsoever, some random hockey game, not against a big rival, just a game. I am not making plans. We are not going out. If you would like to come over to my house, hockey will be on, but I'm not leaving the house unless I can watch the hockey game. I am very much the same, and there are a lot of other little things as well. The situation around this book and this series is Put a Ring on It. This is book 1. Our hero Nick was on like a crappy version of The Bachelor called Put a Ring on It, and he ends up being forced to propose to it's the Bachelorette, and it's him and a couple of guys, but he has like one guy that became his best friend on the show, and he's just like, we have no connection. You guys are just keeping me on the show because, you know, production likes me. I don't want to get engaged to her. And then so when he's one of the final guys, so when he's kind of forced by production to propose to her, she ends up turning him down, and it becomes a thing. The show isn't airing yet, but like all of these leaks are happening to tabloids and stuff, and I'm like, Reality Dan is at work here. And so he's just like, he's over it. He was left at the altar. He went on this show, and he's just like over it. But when he comes back home, he owns like a construction company, and Mina has just recently bought a place that she's turning into her own hair studio. She's saved up money. She's put, I think it's $10,000 towards a contract to somebody who's going to renovate her place, and he runs off with the money and also steals more money is in her cash register. So she reaches out to Nick for help, and he's like, well, agree to fake date me for tabloids and whatever, because stuff is starting to kind of leak at that point, and I'll help renovate your place for free, basically. And she's like, I'll pay for the labor and material. She's like, I can have enough to cover materials. I just need the labor covered, kind of a thing. And I loved it. Nick is Mina's best friend's older brother, so we got that situation. She's loved him forever. He also has kind of pined for her, but he's kept it on the down low. And I just love this. I gave it 5 stars. I had read a lot of good contemporaries this month, and trying to figure out what my favorite was to put it on my bracket, I still don't know. I'm still stuck down to 3, and I don't know how to choose between the 3. So that's going to have to be something where I will just mark them as a potential favorite, and then I'll wait a couple months and see which one has stuck with me the longest. But this is one of the 3 that is in the running for a favorite contemporary of the month. Now, one, because I've already talked to you forever, it feels like, we aren't going to touch base on this because I did a reading vlog, but I have finally finished Manacled. I read this for the fanfiction readathon. I started this during last year's fanfiction readathon, the inaugural fanfiction readathon, and I only got 20% in. And one of my major goals for this year's fanfiction readathon was to finish Manacled, and I have done so. This is my combo book. There is a free audiobook up to chapter 54, 56, something like that, on Spotify. I have everything linked in my reading vlog that I put up there. 5 stars. I get it. It is dark. We're doing like Harry Potter if Harry lost the war. And then they kind of got put into a Handmaid's Tale situation. It's very dark. It's very hard. But the ending, once we got, it's very interestingly set up. We kind of jump into where the Handmaid's Tale is kind of being put into place. This is Hermione and Draco. And then we have part 2, which is like a flashback of the war and what happened there and how they lost the war. And then we jump back to the present. And that's part 3 is the shortest. But part 3 is arguably the most powerful. And I'm so happy to have finished it. Not only because it's done, but I just... It was really good. It was really, really good. I think I need some time before I pick up another long fan fiction, though. But it's done. So watch my vlog to hear me talk about all the things regarding Manacled. So then we will move on. One of the other 2 books that are in the running of my top favorite contemporary books is In a Jam by Kate Canterbary. Now, I've read Kate Canterbary before. I was kind of nervous going into this. When this came out and Buzzing About Romance did a quick shot of romance episode on it, Becky was talking about it in the Discord, and I was like, oh, it sounds so cute. I don't know. And Becky's just like, read it. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. I'll add it on my TBR. And I never read it. Well, I have since now read it. When in doubt, trust Becky. For me, I give this 5 stars. I could not put it down. I had to put it down because I had to read Manacled. And I was like, it's fine. I'll listen to the audiobook at Manacled. And then when I read before bed, I'm going to read In a Jam. But then by the time I was so tired to get in bed, I wasn't reading. So In a Jam took me so long to get through. But I just wanted to like one-shot it. It was so good. This is Shay and this is Noah. Shay ends up being left at the altar. And then she inherits from her step-grandmother a tulip farm, which was in a small town that she was only in for like a year or 2 when she lived with the step-grandmother. And she has a year to get married, and otherwise the like farm reverts to the town property or whatever. And the farm next door is Noah, who was one of her friends when she was at this high school, and it is their reconnection. He's been pining for her from high school. He is an adoptive father of his niece, who is a little girl who has ADHD issues. Shay is a kindergarten teacher, and I love this book. I loved it. There was one moment where I was like, are we really doing this? And then they did it, and I was like, I don't know about that. And then I was like quickly on board. I enjoyed this. This is my favorite Kate Canterbary book for sure. I cannot recommend In a Jam enough if you love small town farmer. Noah is just such a cinnamon roll, but he's like the grumpy, starchy one. And we've got animal antics. We've got a good amount of steam in this. This gives me everything I want from a small town farmer romance. I loved it. I love the mutual pining. We also have a lot of Shay dealing with some insecurities, both just from growing up all her life and the situation with her mom and kind of being pushed from boarding school to, you know, foster home to foster home. And they weren't like actually foster homes, but they were like step grandmothers and people like that because her mom's, I guess, a traveling person constantly. And she also has insecurities about being left at the altar, and I love this book. I'm not a big book boyfriend tracker, but if I had a list, Noah would be pretty damn close to the top of it. So maybe I should keep a list, but I don't. But Noah has stuck in my head since I have read this book. And there were so many times I wanted to put this book on my mid-year freak out, but I was like, I'm reading it in July. It is July. It is not June. I am very strict with my mid-year freakout where I only look at books I've read until June 30th. And like I said, this one is one of the ones that is really, really putting me through the ringer on trying to figure out which one is my favorite contemporary for July. So let's move on, because I am talking at you forever. This is going to be a long wrap up. I'm sorry. My videos are always long, but that's just what I do. I like to talk about books. Okay, the 10th book I read, we're not even halfway through. Oh my gosh. Okay, some of these I might try to speed up through. I picked up Keeping Mr. Right Now by Robin Bielman. This is the first book in her Kisses in the Sand series. This is, I picked the audiobook on Hoopla. This is the same author who did like Talk British to Me, Talk English to Me, something like that I really loved. I think I gave that like 4 or 5 stars. I gave this one 3.5. It was okay. This is a surfing romance, which was super fun. This is my one sports romance. And Sophie was one of those people who went to graduated high school early, graduated college early. She's only in her like mid-20s and she already has her PhD. And she used to work in brain science stuff, researching. And then has since decided that that is not what she enjoys doing. That is just what she is good at. And she wants to be an event planner. And she is kind of on her first big solo job because something has happened with her boss. And she is going to help run this surfing movie festival thing that's happening in California. I still don't quite understand the movie festival part of it. Like, I don't know much about surfing as someone who lives in a landlocked state. So I don't know if this is really a thing. It probably is. But Sophie was born and raised in Montana, has never left Montana, and is now in Southern California with a bunch of, surfer dudes. And she kind of enters into this fake dating-ish situation with Zane, and they both really like each other. I gave this 3.5 stars because it was fine. There were some moments where I really enjoyed the book. I thought Sophie at times was a little too naive, a little too sheltered. But I could understand it just because she does struggle with social relationships because she was always so much younger than her peers throughout all of her schooling. I just feel like sometimes it was a little too stereotypical, and I could almost see where everything was going to happen and where we were going to go, but not in a good way. Not necessarily in a bad way, but just in a flatline way, I guess. But yeah, 3.5 stars. I still enjoyed it for the most part. It didn't just completely grab me, and it was fine as an audiobook to pick up, and it definitely has the summary vibes. So let's just move on. Then I picked up my worst book of the month, Jilted by Kelly Jamieson. This is the first book in her Promise Harbor Wedding series. Oh boy. I was sitting at about a 4 stars, maybe 4.5 star, until we got to about 80% of this book. And then I got so angry. I really wanted to give this lower, but I feel like because 80% of the book I enjoyed, maybe it was more than 80. I think it was like 83%, 87%, something like that. I enjoyed this book a lot. I ranted about it in one of my weekly vlogs when I read this. So check out my weekly vlog playlist. It would be, as you can probably tell, somewhere in the middle of the month. I really don't want to get into a rant because I'm trying to keep things short. My biggest issue with this book is the way that the heroine is treated at the end of the book, particularly by her father. Everyone is judging and making comments about the way that she is living her life. Their mother just pretty much abandoned them when she was very young, and she has always felt like she wasn't wanted by her mother, and she did not have a good relationship with her father and didn't feel like she was wanted or loved by her father as well, which kind of hit close to me in a way. And her father says some pretty rude, pretty strong things to her at the end. And she goes off and she's very hurt by these things. And she's like, okay, fine. You don't want me here. I will leave. And then, you know, they make comments about running away. But I'm sorry. I'm over this running. If you are in a place that is mentally, emotionally harmful to you and you need to leave that situation, that is not running away. That is not hiding from your problems. That is getting away from a situation that is toxic and harmful to you, even if it's just for your emotions and mental health. I feel very strongly about that. She goes away, she ponders things, she comes back and she apologizes and says how everything is wrong, everybody is right. I'm sorry. No, you have the right to be hurt. You have the right to feel abandoned and not wanted by your father, especially when it comes out in this last little bit. I'm getting all worked up. When it comes out, her father has never once told her that he loves her. This girl's 30 years old. Her father's never once told her that he loved her. And we're just going to wipe away that trauma of not feeling wanted by your parent? No. That is not what's sitting on a beach, staring at the ocean for a couple minutes, and suddenly everything is fine. No. Her father needed to apologize to her and needed to step up for her if he really wanted to bring up this topic of conversation. We do get an apology from Josh, who is the hero, for things that he also said that were in a similar vein. He says, I apologize too. I needed a bigger apology from him. If you're interested in this book, don't read it. If you are at all sensitive about mental health, maybe this is just the thing because it was published a few years ago. I can't remember when it was published. Maybe this is one of my 2010 books. But, as you can tell, it comes back very quickly, my frustration with this book. And this is why I really want to drop it down from 2.5, because it just really, really bothers me. The way that our heroine is almost gaslighted into thinking that the work that she's done on her mental and emotional health is all wrong. And that's not cool. That's not cool. So I'm going to move on. After that, I had the pick me up I needed. And I finally picked up Beauty and Scars by M.L. Philpitt. This is the third book in her Fractured Ever After series. This is Mafia Romance retellings. I read the first two books for the Mafia Romance readathon earlier this year, and this book came out right after the Mafia Romance readathon. If you have not seen that, I'll pop it up above. I did do a reading vlog, because that's what I do. I gave this 5 stars. This was the Beauty and the Beast retelling. Holy cow, this really connected with me. We get Belle kind of being taken in because her father has been a loyal soldier for our family, Corsettis. And this is set in Canada. By the way, ML is a Canadian author. And she finds out that her father was not just some security bodyguard at a club downtown kind of a thing, but that he was a part of the mafia. Nobody knew she existed. She knew nothing about her father's work. She was kept very insular to herself. She is almost a librarian. She just has to finish her master's degree. And her father is killed. We see this at the end of the second book. Completely mind blown because his name was Maurice. And I completely did not put together that Maurice is Belle's father until we got to this book. And I'm like, how did I not see it? But there are so many nods in these books to the Disney movie versions of these fairy tales, and I love it. I love it. This series just tickles my brain just right with the mafia and the retelling aspects. So Belle is taken in for her safety because they're trying to figure out the big overarching plot of the bad guy that we meet in the first book, and she's taken in for her safety, and so Raphael can potentially learn what she knows, which is nothing, but they want to make sure it's nothing and she's not putting on an act. And it it gave me everything I could want, especially after the dumpster fire that Jilted ended on. And this is the other book that I'm struggling on. The 3 books that I'm struggling for a favorite. This is the 3rd one. I love this to pieces. I really wanted to jump into the 4th book, which came out at the end of July. But it was like 400 plus pages. And I was like, I need to take a break. I need to take a break. I can't pick up that book. I can't pick up that long of a book right now. Because I had other things I needed to get to. So I loved it. I can't wait. Book 5 comes out in September. I love this series. I love this series. If you enjoy Mafia romance, if you enjoy retellings, please read ML Philpitt. I am obsessed with her. Okay, then I picked up a little shorty, the In a Jam extended epilogue. I just gave it 5 stars because it was cute. We see things in the future. It's like 2 little bonus epilogues set a little bit in the future. One is from Noah's POV and one is from Shay's POV. We get one of the little epilogues is them preparing for Halloween and talking with Jeannie, who is his niece, and I just seeing like a little glimpse into their life living their HEA. It was just so cute and like just so perfect. Like I love bonus epilogues, bonus scenes and things like this. It's just, I just loved it. I just loved it. Okay, then I also should say, before we jump into this, back to Beauty and the Scars, there was a lot of dealing with parental grief, which really struck a chord in me with regards to my own mother's passing. And this was obviously Isabel's father's passing, and I thought all of that was handled really well. I'm very particular about the way that grief is handled in books, as being someone who has dealt with a lot of grief in my life. So I also wanted to throw that back in there. Then the next like full-length book I picked up was debut new release You with a View by Jessica Joyce. Let me tell you, the weekend that I read Beauty and Scars in this book was a weekend I couldn't stop crying. You with a View also deals very heavily with grief, this time over a grandparent. And when I tell you the amount of things that I connected with in losing my I've lost both of my, well, I've lost all of my grandparents. I'm pretty sure. Still not 100% sure who my mother's father was, but all the grandparents I have known, I have lost. I was particularly extremely close with my paternal grandmother. And this book, I lost her when I was in high school, so it's been a long time. And I feel like particularly grief over my mother has definitely been the number one most serious grief that I deal with when I get the wave. This brought back memories, and some of them I have definitely been sitting in my subconscious for a long time, and just moments with my grandmother and dealing with my grandmother. And this book was almost healing for me in a way. And also kind of a little bit sad because seeing the support group that was around... I'm doing it again. Last time I talked about this book, I started crying. This is how this book affects me. But when I lost my grandmother, my support person was my mom. And seeing the support of Noelle's family in this was hard to read because I wish that I had a family that was supportive in that way. Not to say that my family wasn't supportive, but I didn't have the emotional support, I guess, that I needed in dealing with my grief. that all came from my mom when I lost my grandmother. So when I lost my mom, you know, I definitely felt alone in the world, which is how Noelle feels in this. So this was a mishmash of grief, and after just reading Beauty and the Scars, I was already like in my grief. It was a little more heightened. I was at the top of the wave. But this book was so beautiful in the grief aspect. And I mean, heck, even getting to like the acknowledgments at the end of the book, and like the first sentence is the author is like, I wrote this for my grandma or something like that. And you can tell that she has lost someone. I feel like the grief was really well covered in this, and how different people grieve. One thing that drives me nuts is when people tell other people how they should grieve. That is still my like biggest thing with The Takeover. I know people love it, but that little beginning part where her friend tells her how to grieve her missing husband, that book will never be a 5-star for me because of that scene. But anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this. This book just really touched me and was healing, and I feel like these 2 books came into my life when I needed it, because I have definitely been struggling a little bit more of late with things grief-wise, and just, you know, feeling like I've lost all of my family kind of a situation. And these books kind of helped me work through that, and I have come out better on the other side of it because of it. So thank you to ML and Jessica for writing these books. But anyway, this book is super cute. Outside of all the grief stuff, this is, like I said, Noelle, and her grandmother has recently passed, and she's going through a box of some of her stuff, and she finds a love letter-ish and a picture from a gentleman named Paul, who was not her grandfather, about, you know, eloping and running away together. And she's just like, I thought my grandfather was the love of my grandma's life. Who the hell is Paul? So she posted on TikTok, does anybody recognize the man in this photo? And it goes viral. And she, you know, is becoming, somebody recognizes it and is like, yeah, that's my grandfather, and reaches out. It turns out that it is like her high school nemesis almost. They both were always competing to be like the valedictorian, top student in the class type situation, and that is Theo. And so they get reconnected, and they decide to go on the like honeymoon adventure trip together with Paul to kind of learn more about her grandmother and her life before she met her grandfather, and just like when she was in college. And it's super cute. I really love this book. On top of the grief stuff, I really enjoyed this. There was a little bit of the third act where I was just like, what is going to happen? What is going to happen? But I liked the way that Noelle and Theo both handled themselves. And it wasn't like a full breakup, but it was just I'm here for you. You need to deal with this now. And I liked the way it was handled. Nobody got, even when they were in heightened emotions in an argument, they were both trying to say things that, well, Theo says something and it comes out wrong. And instead of Noelle just taking it wrong, she's just like, she does take it wrong, but she's just like, is that really what you mean? And he's like, it came out wrong. So she still has the wherewithal to not just completely blow the situation up. So I love this book, 5 stars. I'm so glad I pre-ordered it, and the universe just knew I needed a copy of this book, and I'm glad I have it. Plus, I think it has an absolutely gorgeous cover, and I highly, highly recommend this book. I cannot believe this is Jessica's debut book. I'm ready for more, Jessica. I'm ready for you to... Okay, I just got a phone call, so I don't know where exactly it cut off because I was looking elsewhere, because I just can't just look at my camera, you know? Okay, on to book 15. I picked up Give Love a Try by Nanxi Wen finally. I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4.5 stars. This is a part of the Smarty Pants romance universe. This is Common Threads book 2. I picked up the audiobook for this. This is another second chance romance, which is crazy. This is the situation where Tia is getting engaged to someone who's high society, and you know, his parents come from like old school money and they want a prenup, so Tia sets herself up with a lawyer to go through all the paperwork and comes to find out that the person that she was in love with back in high school and college, that they got married on a whim. Something happened with the divorce filings and it didn't go through. So she is still married. And so she shows up at Andrew's house to get him to sign the divorce papers. They reconnect. Andrew kind of comes to the terms that when he sees her again, he's just like, yep, nope, I've been pining for Tia. And no one has ever caught my attention because I'm still in love with Tia. And so the way that they handled her being in another relationship, I think, kind of went down. I mean, I was a little like, oh, this feels a little, but nothing happens. But that part was like a little, I also didn't really like her fiance. I feel like her fiance didn't stick up for her enough when his mother is a horrendous person. But, you know, that just means he wasn't for her, right? But I loved it. 4.5 stars. I'm a big fan. We obviously, Nanxi is, I'm not sure if she's Chinese. But we have like Chinese representation in here. I'm trying to see about the author. She doesn't say. Oh my god, that's funny. Nanxi Wen thought she was going to write the greatest historical novel. Turns out her characters decided that they wanted to be in the 21st century with modern plumbing, online shopping, and reality TV shows. Apparently this is also her debut book, so that's cool. Didn't realize that. I guess I didn't read her about the author thing when I got through this book. Yeah, because I listened to this on audiobook. That is why. So, I mean, I love this. 4.5 stars. I'm super excited to see what else she is going to write. I loved it. I did want more of a connection to the Smarty Pants romance. With it being called Common Threads, I was expecting, and this is on me, this is my expectations, but I was expecting a connection not only with the Knitting in the City series, but more fiber related, like somebody in this book goes to the same yarn shop. They end up going to one of the knitting clubs that are held at this yarn shop, something like that. The connection is with Andrew. He is somewhat friends, works in the past. Potentially he works for Quinn's company, but he knows Alex, who is the hero from Love Hacked. But I wanted, it's Common Threads, so I wanted there to be something more fiber related in this. And that is once again my expectations. But I loved it. I thought it was super fun. 4.5 stars, and another Smarty Pants romance book down. There's so many. I have not been very well at keeping up with their releases, but I got another one done. So I'm excited. Okay, then I picked up Decisions We Make After Midnight by Rachel Higginson. This is the spin-off series to her Opposites Attract series. And this is Decisions in Durham. And I had to give this 5 stars. This was so good. Not what I was expecting. Did not read the blurb. So this is Lola and Will. We are back in Durham. And Lola works for her father's multi-million-dollar company. Her specific job is like in the research, and her big project has been to basically create and expand a new organic grocery store that also offers like quick fast food type options. And there is a new one being ready to go into construction and get set up down in Florida. And she's getting ready to leave to Florida. Her longtime boyfriend, now fiance, has, this deal is also encompassing, this guy and his family's business as well. And she comes to find out right before she has to leave on this business trip that's will have them being together in close proximity for several months while this project kicks off in Florida. She finds out he's been cheating on her for practically their entire relationship since they got together when they were in college. And when she brings this up to her father, he's just like, suck it up. He's not going to pull that crap. Once you're married, you got to suck it up and get married to him. This is where, if I were to dock this down from 5 stars, it would be the situation with her father. I feel like her father didn't do enough groveling or growing. But I also feel like at the end, Lola was just like, this is how my family is. We're just going to have to deal with it. But when she arrives in Durham and she stays with her friend, who I hope gets a book, maybe with Lola's twin brother. I think that would be a fun pairing. But anyway, she needs a job because she wants money, and she feels weird about touching the money in her bank account because even though she works for her job, it feels weird because she gets paid because she works at her father's company. And even though she does her job and she's very good at her job, she feels weird touching that money because she feels like it came from her father, even though she's really good at her job. So she needs a job for money. And so she sees that this bar is hiring. It is called Craft. And we have seen this bar, our characters in the previous books visit it in the last couple books in that series. And it is her relationship with one of the family members that own this, Will. He's the grumpy bartender, older brother. And Lola is a hot mess as a waitress. She's a hot mess. But I just love the way that she's just able to kind of break out of her shyness and her quietness. And she's tired of being the one that just goes along with everybody's plan and is the good daughter who doesn't step out of line. And, you know, something that she just can't put up with anymore is her being forced to marry this dude because it's good for business. And she's just like, she's had enough of being the good, perfect daughter, and she wants to move on. So, you know, she's breaking out of that. She's kind of becoming more outspoken and more protective of herself and her own values. And Will is kind of seeing her evolve, and Will is kind of opening up to her. And I loved their relationship. I did want a little bit more from the romance, but overall, the way I was left with this book was just, Rachel Higginson did it once again. It wasn't perfect, but I couldn't not give it 5 stars because of the way it made me feel when I finished reading this book. I was just like, my heart. And I can't wait to read more in this series. There is another book out. There's at least 3 English siblings that own this, so I'm guessing there's at least a 3rd book. But like I mentioned, I really want a book for Lola's twin brother and Lola's best friend, maybe even together. So I'm asking Rachel, please and thank you. Okay, then I read the arc for Secrets at Sunset by Juliette Cross. This is a novella that she wrote for the Happily Ever Collective Patreon group last year. And it has since reverted back to her, so she is releasing it. This is book 2 in the Beauville series. I gave it 5 stars. This has everything I could ever want in a novella. We've got some steam. We've got some pining. The pacing was so well done. Their relationship was so believable. I feel like a lot of the times novellas really work when there is a previous relationship. This is best friends, her older brother's best friend. And he's also kind of been at their house the entire time. So also childhood friends kind of a situation. I feel like that works really well in novellas because you can establish the relationship of the previous relationship of the character. So you can kind of jump into the I love you portions quicker in novellas, but sometimes it's not done enough where it's not as believable that they had feelings for each other previously. It is here. I love it. Julia just is an awesome writer for me, and I love her to pieces, and I love this book. I have it pre-ordered, the paperback. I'm waiting for my copy. And I loved it. And we have another contemporary coming out from her later this year, and then she's jumping back into fantasy. So I'm just ready for more Juliette. I can't wait to read more in the series whenever she is ready to give it to us. A perfect novella for me. Then I picked up the audiobook for This Woven Kingdom by Tahereh Mafi. I needed an Asian mythos folklore retelling, and I had a lot of East Asian ones, and then I found this, and this is Persian mythology. This is young adult fantasy, I knew going in, based on kind of blurbs, and I looked at a couple of reviews, that this is a romance that evolves over the trilogy. The first 2 books are out so far. The 3rd book is not out yet. Based on the release books of the first couple, I'm guessing the 3rd book will be out sometime early 2024. So I have time to read the 2nd book and get caught up. I enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I am definitely, after reading Sarah J. Maas, I'm slowly kind of making my way into YA fantasy. I'm still not the biggest YA reader, but I feel like the characters here have gone through life, and even though they are technically young adult aged, this definitely had more of a new adult, more mature feeling to it with the situation. So our heroine, Eliza, is a djinn. She has kind of been hidden. There was a big war between djinn and clay, which djinns were created from fire, humans were created from clay. So I love that they're referred to as clay throughout the entire book. It kind of keeps the ambiance of the feeling. I don't know much about Persian mythology. I do know a little bit about jinn, but I don't know if jinn specifically came from Persia, or if this is Persia's twist on jinn, or how jinn mythology kind of evolved. But I thought this was really fun. I gave it 4 stars. I'm definitely intrigued. We get a sudden dragon, and I am here for it. And the way that it ended, a little bit cliffhangery, and I'm a little nervous because it seems like we might be going into a love triangle situation, which I am not a fan of, but maybe we're not. So here's hoping. So I'll pick up the 2nd book at some point, but I enjoyed it. 4 stars, a good start. Definitely a lot of world building in this, a slower romance. We get some longing touches. We get a steamy makeout sesh, and I'm intrigued to read more. I'm for sure. And another new author to me, and I'm loving the like Persian Middle Eastern vibes. Then I picked up another audiobook, and I picked up The Lord I Left by Scarlett Peckham. This is the final book in her Secrets of Charlotte Street series. I read the first 2 a while back when the 2nd book was a Rake Appreciation Society book, and I have to read books in order, so I read the first book and then the 2nd book. Wasn't a big fan of the first book, liked the 2nd book quite a bit. This one was another kind of for me. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't believe their romance 100%. It was fine. It was a little too religion-based to me. I knew it was going to be religion-y going into it, just based off of the main hero, Henry, and his like righteousness that we had to deal with in the first 2 books. But it was still a little overdone for me, so I struggled at times. And while he seems like his take and view on religion and how, religion should be welcoming to everyone, it seemed like every other person in the world outside of Henry had a different viewpoint, and had the viewpoint that makes me dislike organized religion. And so the fact that Henry was like the one shining person in all of religion, I was just kind of like, there's got to be more than one, right? I don't know. It just wasn't a book for me. It was fine. It was well written. I had a lot of issues, and I can't tell you how many times I was like, what? Really? Really? From both Henry, from Alice's parents. So basic plot of this book, because, I'm not telling you that for some reason. I'm just going off on my feelings. Alice is a worker at the club that we have been introduced to in the 2 previous books, and she gets a letter from her sister saying her mom is sick and they don't think she's going to make it. And Henry is there trying to find a journal that he left there when he was being introduced and like taught about what exactly the club does for his research. And when he finds out that the town is close to his family's estate and he's headed there, that's why he needed his journal, so he can then return home and put together his paper. He's like, I can give you a ride. They get sudden ice storms, sudden snowstorms, so we get some stuck together. We get, our heroine's definitely very sex positive, sex forward. So there were aspects of this book that I enjoyed, but I just think overall, I was just like, okay, that was a book, and I read it. And I feel like I didn't really get anything for me out of the book, but it was good. 3 stars. Then I picked up, I went hog wild, and I picked up A Blue Ribbon Romance by C.M. Nascosta. I recently read Morning Glory and Milking Farm. I finally jumped on that hyped book. And it was fine. I enjoyed it. It was okay. I definitely understand why it's hyped. For me, I definitely don't picture him as a full... I definitely picture him differently in my head. A little less cow-like, because that's weird for me as someone who has grown up next to farms. And a lot of my best friends were farms in the small town I went to middle school and high school in. So, you know, I've been around cows a lot. And that was just a little too cow realistic for me. But I've read other Minotaur books and I didn't have a problem. But I think just the artwork I saw for this one was just a little too much for me. But so in my head, I definitely picture him differently. But you know, I enjoyed this. I think I definitely enjoyed Morning Glory Milking Farm more. It was interesting getting Rourke's perspective of him and Violet's relationship. I just feel like if you were to read this by yourself, you'd be missing a lot of the emotional growth between them, because this definitely felt more like Rourke pining for Violet a lot, and then her finally like capitulating. There's also some weird writing techniques. I can't remember if it was in Morning Glory Milking Farm, where we will suddenly be flashbacking to a situation and then popping back in the present, and it'd take me a little bit to realize, oh, we're back in the future, or now we've jumped ahead, or back in the past and now we're jumping ahead. And so I just would either like a header or just a space or something to just let me know that we are not currently in the present situation. So that was a little bit of a struggle for me. And I feel like maybe Morning Glory Milking Farm had something similar, but I can't remember 100%. So just be aware about that. But this is considered book 1.5 in the Cambric Creek series because this is Rourke's perspective of Morning Glory. I almost wish these books were kind of pushed together and the timeline straightened out a little bit. But overall, I can see why people love these books. Then I picked up The Upside to Being Single by Emma Hart. This is a standalone from her. It is set in New Orleans. This is Melly and Jake. Melly is a manager at a small boutique hotel in New Orleans. It is Mardi Gras, and she's out drinking with her friends, and her friends are like, little, and they convince her to flash some gentlemen who are hanging out on a porch. And she sees one who's just kind of sitting there. She catches his eye and then she flashes him. She's not wearing a bra at the time, which is sometimes I wish I'm a person who could live without wearing a bra, but you know what? We only do that at home. I'm not someone who can do that in public. But anyway, so he gets her full breasts. And turns out that he is the new manager. The new owner of the hotel she works at. So, you know, that's the biggest thing of angst is her not hoping that if the relationship goes wrong that she won't suddenly lose her job and her livelihood and all this stuff, because she's been working at this hotel and worked her way up since she was like in high school or something crazy. So it was cute. It was fun. It was It was a little bit shorter, kind of more a novella length, just over 200 pages if I remember correctly. I gave it 4 stars. It was fine. Not my favorite Emma Hart book, not the worst Emma Hart book I've read, so it was fine. Then I picked up That Kind of Guy by Stephanie Archer. This is the first book in her Queen's Cove series. This is fake dating / fake engagement / not so fake marriage. This is Avery. This is small town set in Vancouver Island in Canada. So Emmett wants to run for mayor because there's a lot of issues in this town that aren't kind of taken care of infrastructure wise. It's just known that when it's summertime, you're gonna like the electrical grid is gonna go down like once a week, and when it's wintertime, it's gonna be at any time, any day, every day. The power is probably gonna go out. And his best friend from childhood, next door neighbor, their little girl is on dialysis, and with all these constant power outages, they just can't handle that extra stress of dealing with the generator and all of that. So they decide to move, and Emmett is like, we need to not just focus on improving all the tourist areas, but also making this a better place for our people who live here year round. So he's running for mayor against the person who has never had to campaign because he's been mayor of the town forever. And to improve his position in the polls, he needs a girlfriend. So he proposes to Avery to be fake dating, and he will co-sign a loan because she's trying to buy the restaurant that she works at, but she wasn't approved for the business loan to buy it from her boss. She's also a manager of this restaurant. Weird kind of similarities between a lot of the books I read this month. Then it becomes fake engagement, and then it becomes let's plan a fake wedding, which turns out to be not so fake, but it was cute. I gave it 4 stars. Avery is definitely a pricklier heroine, and I struggled to connect with her or understand her decision making at times, but overall a good start. I'm definitely intrigued to read more from Stephanie Archer. Okay, final book. We are almost done. The final book I picked up was the audiobook, The Mercenary's Bride by Claire Delacroix, who I found out is one of the pen names, and this author is also Deborah Cook, who writes fantasy paranormal dragon shifter books, who I own that series, and I was super surprised that they were the same people, or same person. But anyway, this is a holiday novella that didn't feel very holiday. It's just kind of set at holiday time, and there is a couple mentions of Yule being prepared for, but I wouldn't consider this a holiday novella. It doesn't feel very holiday. I give this 3.5 stars. It was fine. Medieval Scotland. This is between Miari and Quentin. Quentin is the former captain of the guard for Miari's father. He's known as the Hawk. When he is out on some sort of mission, I still don't quite understand why he wasn't there. But he was in Spain. Gets attacked, loses at least one finger, if not more, is wearing an eye patch, has severe eye damage, is limping now. He is physically disabled now. All of his armor, sword, his horse, everything was stolen from him, and he was basically left for dead. He has finally made his way back to their what is this? The series is The Brides of Inverfire. And so Inverfire is the name of their clan land estate. I can't remember what you call it in medieval Scotland, but their area is called Inverfire. And there is another clan that they're kind of struggling with trying to take over Inverfire. And they, for some reason, they think that Quentin is loyal to these other people and he's a trick. So I don't know. Nobody believes that what happened to him, even though he is literally missing a finger, and is wearing an eye patch. But he has always kind of had a romance with Miari. He kind of taught her how to defend herself. He taught her how to use like a bow and arrow. She's a pretty skilled woman warrior. And he has come back because he promised her he'd bring her a special blade on his travels. And so he has come back to give her that blade. And then she wants the relationship with him. And he kind of gets forced out by her father and the new captain of the guard and the other guards there, because nobody trusts him because they don't believe his story. And then so there's a weird thing where he gets kicked out, and then he infiltrates this other clan to I don't know. It was 3.5 stars. It was fine. It was cute. I wanted more from the romance. It didn't quite hit all the notes I needed, but the beginning I enjoyed. Where it got weird is when people started saying that they just trusted him, and he got kicked out of the like keep, and I was just like, okay, we're just going weird with it now. But it was fine. 3.5 stars. It was like a 2.5 audio hour book before I sped it up. So, you know, it was the medieval Scotland historical novella that was decent. So 3.5 stars, and there we have it. The 23 books I read in the month of July. It was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot to talk about. But you know what? That's okay. I enjoy talking about books. That's why I have a booktube. So I'm going to leave it at that. So this video is not a lot longer. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to leave me a comment down below, let me know what your favorite book of July was, and if you have read any of these, if you're interested in any of these, if you're interested in any triggers or any of the potential sensitive stuff I've talked about, feel free to reach out. I am okay. I just don't want to spoil things too much for people, even though I am someone who doesn't mind about spoilers for certain things. If you'd like to just leave me an emoji, leave me a drink emoji, because we had a lot of like bar, restaurant based contemporaries this month, weirdly enough. But otherwise, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all soon with another video.